here we go. Tonight, we're going to have some fun. This is the part of the school system that we most enjoy, talking about how we, as parents, can get free money. You certainly can't complain, because it's not very often, and especially when you get out of the high school, you'll learn about people who haven't had children in college, how good the colleges are at asking you for money. Today, we're going to talk with a special guest to give you some ideas and advice on how to get some of the free money. Why don't we start with an introduction?
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me on, Al. I'm Matt Baione. I'm the Director of Guidance at Milford High School. It's my second year at the high school, and it was great to be here last year to talk about the scholarship process, and I'm looking forward to talking about it this year with you.
Tell us about scholarships in general. What kind of scholarships are available?
Well, there are different types of scholarships that we have overall. Right now, we run a comprehensive community scholarship program at the high school, where there are over 80 community scholarships available for students. It would be difficult for me to talk about every category. There are dozens of categories. And what we've talked to students about just last week is going on to our Naviance program, which I'll talk a little bit more about. That has all the information about scholarships, the scholarships that are available. So those are our local scholarships, our community scholarships. There are also national scholarships that are available to students. And those students could start applying to them last year. And students throughout this whole year have been applying to them. And there are different websites that they can go onto. Our local scholarship process just began in terms of in the middle of February. So it's going to be going throughout February and through half of March. So I can talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
So now, when you say people have been applying for a year, I mean,
yes.
Those are for the national scholarships.
Those are mostly for the national scholarships. Collegeboard.com, scholarships.com, fastweb.com, those are the most popular websites that students can go on. And there are scholarships that students can start applying to a year ago, as I had talked about, as I mentioned. So yes, those are scholarships that students have already been applying for.
So unless you're a parent with too much money and not enough places to spend it, you want to look at these national scholarships.
Yes, yes.
And you want to look junior year?
Junior year is a good time to start. If not applying, then just to be aware of what type of scholarships are out there and what the criteria are and what the requirements are to apply. Many scholarships do require an essay, some additional information. We really push students to create a student resume. And those are always great to be able to send off for scholarships. Just a quick snapshot of what students have been involved in during their time in high school.
But now the majority of the kids are going to need help.
Definitely, definitely.
Because
yes.
I remember both daughters complaining about having to write an original essay. And, you know, my oldest wrote one for Target, for Target.
Sure, sure.
And all I remember is that one essay got her a $1,000 check.
Wow.
So somehow, compared to going out with the kids, it seemed like a good investment of her time.
Definitely,
You know,
definitely.
with
Could have been
luckily-
2 hours that she wrote that.
Didn't matter.
That essay.
One, my darling bride got to spend time with her, which junior and senior year was always interesting to see the dynamic of the two of them together.
Oh, sure, sure.
Amazing how when she went to college, she came back, and I remember one weekend looking at her and I said, "Who are you and what alien took over your body?" So for the mothers out there is hope.
Right.
Because it was Saturday night and she's home playing Boggle with her mother.
Wow.
I'm trying to think. It wasn't 6 months prior that if I had ever suggested as a senior in high school that she stay home Saturday night and play a board game with her mother,
Right.
She would have probably thrown the dice at me.
There's still hope.
There's still hope.
Yes.
When they go away, they start to appreciate
Right.
how much
Right.
mom did for them.
Right.
But over and over the years, what I've heard is it's a worthwhile investment of the parents' time
Right.
to get out there ahead of the kids, see what's out there,
Right.
chart what is required, and then guide the kids.
Right. Right.
Because most kids still, you know, and I think of junior year, they're not really having a full appreciation of what college is really going to cost.
True, true. And we have students and families coming from all different types of backgrounds, and in terms of students, parents who have had students go through the process like yourself years before. Sometimes it's the first time the parents are going through that process with their first child going off to college. So we try and fashion our information for parents all across those areas. We had last year for juniors, our current seniors, last year during junior year, we had a junior parent night in the spring where we started to talk about the college application process and some scholarship process involved in that.
Remember that? We all sat, that was the one where we sat in the Davern Auditorium.
Yep.
And it was actually full, because it hit all of us
Always
to
good to
say,
see that.
how much is it going to cost me next year?
Right, right.
But, realistically, so junior year as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
I got to get my act together.
I think so, and it's a team approach. We don't want parents just going out and doing all the work for students. We want to be engaged with, want parents to be engaged with their students, and for students to also be driving the bus in terms of some of the things
But
too.
I think it's a cool thing that I loved coaching soccer since the kids were 6 years old.
Right.
And I enjoyed the soccer. But I got time with my daughters.
Right.
Hours and hours and oodles of time.
Right.
To me, the whole scholarship process gave us time together. It was like a project we were doing.
Right.
Of course, thank God my darling bride could do the grammar. Yes,
That was not your strong suit? Is that what
No,
you're
as
saying?
my daughters once said, yes, Dad, you have the grammar skills of a dead bovine. I was like, oh, okay.
Quite descriptive.
Yes. And she was very wonderful towards me. When
Wow.
she says, when I need chemistry or math, I'll come to you. The English, not so much.
Go to the strengths.
But here I am, I'm going into junior year in high school, or my child is.
Mm-hmm.
What's my first step?
I think it's sitting down and having a conversation and doing some research with your child, and also setting up a meeting with your guidance counselor to get input from our guidance counselors at the high school. They have a great background. Some of them have brought hundreds of students through this process before. So we want people to be getting the best information.
So as a parent, I should call you.
Sure,
set up an
definitely.
appointment.
Yes, we encourage that. We encourage that. Parents are coming in all the time in terms of setting up appointments.
And I would think the earlier, the better.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah.
I've had a number of kids, Milford kids, who wanted to go to schools like Holy Cross, coincidence that I went there,
Right.
asking me what should they do. And the first thing I tell them is the end of May of your sophomore year or your junior year, get going to visit schools.
Right, right.
Because at that point, the big push for filling the class is over.
Mm-hmm.
So the colleges get to breathe.
Right.
So it's your junior summer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easy to go visit.
It really is. It really is. And like that, there are so many parts of the college process and trying to figure out, what students are interested in, because that's also going to drive a little bit of the bus in terms of where they might apply to. If a student is very interested in engineering or science or architecture, there are schools out there that have very directed studies and majors in that. But if students aren't sure what they want to do, which is most students at that age. So if they aren't sure, then we tell them just get out there and go onto a college campus, see what it feels like, go on a tour. If you have any older cousins, older brothers, or older siblings, go to their colleges. And it might not be the best fit for you, but at least parents and students can be on campus, can be able to talk to students, be able to talk to college admissions counselors, and just get some feedback. And just that feeling of being on a college campus also ignites more questions and kind of gets the ball rolling.
Best advice I remember I got was don't panic. Because both my girls were raised in Milford. Emily's born and raised in Milford.
Right.
She was a little different. Alexis started out, how far can I get away from the center of the universe? So she's looking for applications to the College of Pluto, University of Mars. You know, when I see Alaska, it's like my instincts were seriously, you know, California, and the only thing I'm thinking of is she's going to go out there and I'm going to lose her. I'll never see her.
Sure, sure.
But it was like, fine, if you want to explore
Right.
going out 2,600 miles away, let's do it.
Right.
And it was funny because as the time went on, the circles became closer and closer.
Wow.
The concentric circles
Sure.
were
sure.
smaller and smaller to where she talked to enough people where she said, I want to be far enough away from home that I'm away,
Right.
but close enough to be able to jump home. Because she talked to friends who went to California and could get home just physically a couple times, 2-3 times during the year.
Right.
So not panicking, because knowing Lexi, if I had said, you're not going out to the land of fruits and nuts, she would have been at UCal. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking in black and whites is a tough thing to do. There's a lot of gray area in this process. Every student tends to be different in terms of their likes and their dislikes. And as you're talking about in terms of area of the country, how far away from home will students feel comfortable, how big the school is, how small the school is, what type of campus do they want to be in, a suburban area, a rural area, an urban area. Those are all different things that in the process.
To me, that was the biggest set of criteria. Okay, let's look at where in the country you want to be.
Right, right.
And again, I'd tell every parent, don't panic, because where they start, you know, Pluto and Mars is not where she ended up, Worcester. But just going over, saying, okay, what's the advantages? It's hard not to admit that going to, you know, UCal San Diego or USC or even UCLA, if you want to surf, UCal Santa Barbara, you know, the weather, especially in a winter like this one.
Sure. Oh, boy.
I mean, I commuted out there every week, and I loved getting off the plane. Of course, you knew you didn't blend in because there you are in short sleeves at 60 degrees, and everybody's in parkas. But that was the first choice. Then it seemed the next choice was small school, big school.
Right.
You know, my darling bride went to Penn State.
Wow.
She loved it.
Right. Can't get much bigger than that.
10,000 kids in her class.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, you know, on Saturdays, her and 104,000 of her closest friends go watch a football game.
Right.
You know, just amazing to me.
Right.
But she loved huge school. That's what she wanted. You can't argue that the resources available. Penn State decided to get into Division I hockey. They built 9 rinks or 7 rinks.
Wow. On their campus.
It's like, hello?
Wow.
You know,
That's
so
impressive.
if the child loves that big atmosphere,
Right.
well, then it's city. You know, I call it campus or non-campus.
Right. Right.
You know, when I look at BU, you can tell me there's a campus there, but I can't find it.
It's pretty much spread out through half of Boston.
I'm living in Boston if I'm a student there.
Right. But there are students that would love that.
love
That
it.
would love that experience of being in a city and experience everything that goes along with it, and getting to classes by getting on the T and going back and forth.
And there are people like me that would hate it beyond belief.
Right.
You know, so once we went through, okay, big city, little, town, then it came down to, what do you want to do when you grow up? And that was probably the hardest thing.
Right.
You know, engineering school, liberal arts school, everything in between.
Sure.
You know, and most of the times I think most of the kids I've talked to, some of them think they know what they want to do, but you can usually get a feeling for, am I really kind of liberal arts oriented or science oriented?
Right.
Does that feel about right?
I think so, and now science is really growing with the options that students can do in sciences. But yes, if a student is undecided, then it really becomes liberal arts that we would encourage them to get involved in and to go to a school that has a liberal arts program. We have incredible schools right here in the Northeast of the United States that we're really lucky to have. We have people from all over the world and all over the country wanting to go to schools right here. So We have some of the best schools with science programs and also some of the best liberal arts programs. So yes, it's kind of a rough way to kind of
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to tell a parent, here's your checklist.
Right.
You know,
Right.
don't expect your son or daughter to say, I know exactly what I'll be in 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, and part of going to college is growing up and learning what you like.
Right.
I mean, I remember I wanted to be a chemist. I wanted to be in the lab my whole life till I got in the lab and said, I really don't want to be here. I like the chemistry, but I don't want to be behind a bench.
Right. Right.
You know, but it took till junior year in college to figure out that I want to be part of a company that's science-oriented. But I don't want to be behind the bench doing assays for the rest of my life.
Right. Right.
So, you know, once you have that, then you get the ugliness, where it's probably the hardest thing for so many parents is, what can I afford?
Right.
You know, when we were kids, I remember, I think it was UMass. That was our safety school.
Right. Right.
Now, all of a sudden, when I see the caliber of students going to UMass, that doesn't feel like a safety school anymore.
No, it has really changed over the past 20 years and even in the past 10 years. That is by far the hardest state school to get into in Massachusetts. And our state system is really growing and improving. Whereas UMass Lowell and Salem State and Fitchburg State and Framingham State, you know, that's one of about 11 state universities that we have in the state. Used to be in that same category as UMass Amherst, but not anymore. It is becoming harder.
If I got to pay for it as a child, I mean, liberal arts school, private, technical school, they all seem to be within a few $1,000s of each other. I think this year it's like 61,000. Does that sound about right?
It does. It's kind of amazing to throw out those numbers and to think about that. And one of the concerning things is, as parents of high school students, you know, in a short period of time, tuition and fees have gone up astronomically, and unfortunately, they haven't gone up in the same pace that our you know, earnings overall in the country and here in the Northeast have gone up. So that burden of taking on of taking on a lot of debt, you know, is a real concern, and that's something that we as guidance counselors, we as school personnel, you know, counsel students and parents to be aware of that as much as they can. We had a financial aid night in January where a representative from MIFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, came, and it's a great nonprofit organization. We're very lucky as a state to have it. But that's one of the things that they counsel and talk to parents and students about in terms of opening their eyes to, you know, what it means to take on this debt, what things mean in a financial aid award letter. Because it's a difficult thing to navigate through for students and parents.
I don't know how kids today, I mean, I graduated Holy Cross in '78, and remember, all in, $6,200. Now, my mom's making $11,000 a year at Draper's.
Right.
You know, as a drill press operator. My dad's working at GM, making a whopping $18,000 or $18,000. I was stunned that they could afford $6,000 a year.
Right.
You know, you sit there and say, that's almost 25% of their total income.
Yeah. Right.
Amazing. But now I look and say, wait a minute, for that ratio to hold, somebody'd have to be at about $250,000 a year of earnings.
Unfortunately, yes.
I don't know a lot of people around town who are in the 250 and above range in annual income.
Right. Right.
So I shake my head and I say, my God, if these kids take on this kind of debt, how do they ever get started? You know, and I got to tell you, when I wrote that last check, $5,500 a month for Emily,
Wow.
boy, that was a breather. But
a lot of weight off
I
your
sat there and
shoulders,
said,
yeah.
my God, if she walked out with $250,000, you know, or close, you know, 240,000 of debt, how the heck would you're not going to get a job
Right.
out of school?
Well, in the financial aid award letter and what students get in terms of applying for financial aid is a huge part of it. So, very few students are going to pay that whole price. And we call it the sticker price, in terms of the tuition, fees, expenses,
Yeah,
and
I remember
school.
that discussion.
Right, but
Remember I said Alexis wanted to look at all the schools? Yeah, Emily decided I'm going to Holy Cross.
yeah,
She wouldn't apply anywhere else.
wow,
Our heart stopped. So she applies early decision. You know what that says? You're committing to go there.
that is a binding decision, right? And a
Yeah.
binding agreement.
And the odds on you getting financial aid after you've signed that binding letter? Yeah.
Right. Well, hopefully, if students get in early decision to a school, the caliber that Holy Cross is, hopefully there's a merit scholarship involved.
They
Not
don't-
with Emily, but
They
hopefully,
don't do merit scholarships anymore.
hopefully with other students who are applying this
But see,
year.
that was the funny part, because when you look, and some of the data is, I won't say misleading, but a bit confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Because Emily was one of the 40% offered financial aid. She was
Right.
offered a loan at
Right.
8% for $2,900 a semester. And I actually laughed. I
Right.
said, okay, so you're going to offer me a loan of $2,900 a semester against a bill of $60,000 a year.
Right.
Luckily, they're pretty upfront. I said, why are you bothering?
Mm-hmm.
Because then she qualifies as one of the 40%. It looks better.
Wow.
So-
It is it's a very good point to bring up in terms of that confusion, and because a lot of schools say that they offer 100% financial aid. And what we want parents and students to know that there are different categories of financial aid. There are scholarships, there are grants, there is work study, but there's also loans. And like you're saying, colleges will include loans, oftentimes called a Parent Plus loan. That's on top of the government loan that students can get.
Parent plus, what does that mean?
That's an extra way for colleges to be able to bridge the gap in terms of the gap of what they can give to a student and what parents could be able to afford. There's usually a gap in between that. When students apply for financial aid, they get something back in terms of that is called the EFC. That is the family contribution.
I love that.
How much the family can contribute.
I think even if you don't have a kid in college, you should apply to FAFSA, because they'll tell you automatically how rich you are.
Right. They do have a, you're a math and science person. They do have an equation. They keep that equation under wraps, so we're not really a part of that. But they do take.
But whatever narcotic they're taking when they do that equation, they ought to share with the parents.
It is true.
I remember seeing the beautiful part that says, we've calculated how much you can afford to pay.
Right.
And I said, well, where's the part that says, and how you can do it? Because what they think you can afford,
Right.
yeah, if I didn't eat, if I didn't buy clothes, if I didn't have a car.
Right. And it's difficult to know, but they do make it transparent to a certain point in terms of the information that parents do put into the FAFSA application. It's the custodial parents, it's the parents that students live with, where they get that information from, and it's in terms of how much the parent might make and how much they pay in taxes. And some schools, some of the top schools, ask for more information than that. They might ask for 2 or 3 years of information. They might ask for the value of property that parents own. So there, as I said, there are a lot of things that come into play with that. When they get that number, that what a family can contribute, then the schools try and meet up until that point.
So if they think I can pay 30 grand a year, they're going to try and bridge the extra 30
Exactly.
in either financial aid, scholarship, some kind of vehicle.
Right. So if a school costs $60,000 and parents can pay, that family contribution is $30,000, they'll try and their financial aid package will try and meet up to that $30,000. Now, unfortunately, there are oftentimes loans built into that. So that's a very important thing for parents and students to look at when they get their financial aid award letter back. And it's always great for parents and students to call the financial aid office to ask more information. If there's still a huge gap there, then are there different things that they could apply for at that point? Other than the scholarships that they're applying for locally and also nationally.
I've always recommended to parents that once you've kind of narrowed it down, reach out to alumni and find out what's the real flavor, especially recent alumni. Because, you know, you go to Holy Cross, and I can speak for that because we're there,
Right.
and you find out that almost everything is need-based unless you're an athlete.
Right.
So realistically, if they say you can afford to pay 30 grand, that's the best you're going to probably get of real money.
Right. Right.
And most of the time, it's going to have some loans in there that you got to pay back anyway.
Right. Right.
You know, so
Definitely, and you know, when it comes down to it, that the other part of this is making sure that students apply to a number of different schools. The difference between public and private schools. Public schools, you know, being a BC, being a Holy Cross, a BU, and then the private schools being our state colleges and state universities here in Massachusetts.
and hasn't that the price of poker been really an influential driver of top students going to public schools?
In terms of what, the price of?
Well, I'm thinking if I'm a kid and I got to pay for it myself,
Sure.
and I look at Holy Cross, that other Jesuit school, BC, BU, it's $250,000.
Right.
I look at UMass
Sure.
or the UMasses, half that maybe, 100 and a quarter,
I would say so, yes. It's about 25,000
25 a year, so
Yep.
100.
Yep. Yep.
I got to really look and say, if I got to really float, you know, the cash situation myself, it's a $150,000 variance.
Right. Right.
How bad do I want to go to a private school if I'm going to walk out with an extra $150,000 worth of debt?
Right. Right. And those are those difficult decisions to make when it comes down to it. Where after students get their admissions letters, those decision letters back, and then they go through the financial aid process, we want students to have options. But you're right. A lot of you know, top students are deciding to go to, you know, our top universities here in Massachusetts, our public universities. Unfortunately, the rest of the country is also hearing
wants
about
to come
them,
in.
right, because of the reputation. So, you know, the level, you know, when we talk about UMass, Mass Amherst going up in terms of being one of the hardest schools, competitive schools to get into in the state, with our state system, you know, that competitiveness is continuing to go up in terms of the top students from all over the country, or it just not just here in New England or here in Massachusetts wanting to go.
Fact or fiction? If I was applying from North Dakota, I would have a better chance, all in even with a kid from Milford, of getting into a Massachusetts school.
You know what? It really depends. There are a lot of different factors that come into play. You know, colleges really like to look at, you know, in terms of the difficulty of courses that students are taking, the different activities that they're involved in. So
But don't they like to have a demographic that stretches across?
a lot of colleges do, and a lot of colleges make decisions based on that. You're right. Sometimes that could play into your background, you know, your family background. Sometimes that could play into, you know, what interests students have, and sometimes that can play into what part of the country students are coming from. So colleges do want a diverse background of students. I think that's what they're,
So I
they're
always
trying to
laughed. I
pull
said,
for.
you know, I should have bought or rented a house in South Dakota, put your address out there, because the odds on somebody from Wyoming, Idaho are going to be a lot lower
That's true.
than how many kids from Massachusetts are applying,
Right, right,
you know, to Massachusetts school.
yeah.
But now, so we start out, we tell parents, don't wait, because if you wait till senior year, I'd say you're already behind the 8 ball.
I would agree. That that's why we try and do our parent meetings, earlier than just senior year. Like I said, we have our junior meeting every year in the spring of students' of the junior year. It's going to be coming up this spring. Then we have a meeting at the beginning of students' senior year at the end of September to kind of build on what we talked about at the end of junior year and really get the ball rolling.
'Cause I'm thinking realistically, come senior year, every senior is applying for college visit and interviews. And I see, again, some of the schools that I've been involved with end up having students interview potential students.
Sometimes that happens, yeah.
Whereas if you get ahead of the ball, in the end of May, you call the head of admissions. Probably get a better chance of, hey, I would like to interview with you this summer.
Right, right.
Well, I'd much rather have the person who's casting a vote on whether or not I get to go there
Right.
interview me than have a senior, rising senior who now has to translate. So, my gut would be kind of middle of junior year, start thinking, start picking out schools. When you narrow it down, now start reaching out. Now, I wouldn't really recommend they reach out in March or April, because it seems like the admissions department's worried about filling that class.
True. But in school vacations, in February and April vacations, those are good times to at least, if not meet with someone from admissions, to be able to get out to schools to do those visits.
But if you ask in May, you got all summer.
Oh, it's true, definitely, and better to be on
summer, you
top
got
of that.
all summer.
Exactly.
And their minds are off because they've got a couple months to breathe before they have to start the grind for.
Right. And we talked at the beginning in terms of the conversations that parents have with their children, and those conversations are ongoing. As you know, with a parent of having two students go through college. And we talk about it being a marathon process. This is not something that's a quick sprint and then it's over. To be able to talk about it at the end of sophomore year and moving into junior year and just getting little snapshots of what students are interested in or the questions that come up and being able to talk to other people and network along those lines is
See,
really
networking,
great.
to me, that is one of the least used, most influential factors. I mean, the youngest, Emily decided she's going to Holy Cross. End of story. Of course, my heart's pounding. I'm hoping she goes there. But she set out a campaign. And she reached out to the president, well, actually the vice president, because the president's the fundraiser.
Okay.
She reaches out because she came home one day and said, the fellow we had dinner with, your old chemistry teacher, he doesn't teach anymore. I said, no, Frank is provost. He runs Holy Cross. She goes, can I have his email? And she sent him an email.
Right.
And asked for 30 minutes of his life.
Wow.
He spent 2 hours with her. Next thing I know, he's introduced her to the assistant dean of admissions. And then she remembered that I went to school with the dean of admissions. She got Annie's email.
Wow.
And then went to the alumni book and noticed that a friend of ours, family friend Frank Larkin, Judge Larkin, was a Holy Cross boy.
Oh, wow.
So she pinged him. Again, when I think about networking, if you decide you want to go to Holy Cross, there are books. You find a Holy Cross alumni, and they have books of alumni. If you want to go to the other Jesuit school, there are BC people. But
That's true.
Again, I would say find out who in Milford went to BU, BC, Salem State, wherever.
Right.
And ask, go meet with them. Find out more about the school.
Right.
And then maybe they can put you in touch with people.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't bad to interview with the dean of admissions, the assistant dean of admissions, the provost of the school. That was a good start.
Right.
And yet, I don't think most people would even think to try it.
It's interesting being able to find, you talk about finding that information, and there's so much that's available now to kids and everybody to be able to find out about who was an alumni. But you used to have to look for books. Now you can look online for a lot of information. And also there are a lot of alumni events. Colleges have alumni events all over the place. But you know, that networking part, your daughter is you know, an exceptional kid to be able to be thinking about that in high school, but I think more and more high schoolers are thinking about that. I would say the majority, you know, have difficulty, you know, in being able to call somebody or send an email out not knowing a person. But we talk about that in terms of when students go on a visit to a school. Get the card of the person who brought you around, whether it's a student or maybe someone at admissions. We have these college mini fairs in the fall of every fall. So we have 2 of them where there are sometimes up to 80 or 100 colleges that come. I'm sorry, maybe it's more like 50 or 60.
Still, that's impressive.
It's a great amount. It's in our media center and also in our TRC room. But what I observed this past year was something really different, where kids would go up to admissions representatives and they would remember each other from a past visit. You know, the admissions representative would remember, you know, would recognize the student, or the student would go up and know the admissions representative by name. And it's great. It's almost like having somebody in your corner, as your daughter found out. And to be able to continue those conversations, to be able to continue that connection. Because those college admissions representatives are the ones who are going to read the applications of the students. They're going to be talking about them in admissions meetings. And the more they know about students, the better they can advocate for them.
So now I've narrowed down my schools.
Yes.
Now I got to figure out how to pay for this place. So I'm going to start early on Naviance. And any parent who doesn't know what it is, because it's in the bottom of the knapsack that their child carries, and Jimmy Hoffa won't give it up. I knew Jimmy Hoffa lived down there, because everything else was in that knapsack.
Sure.
But they can call the guidance counselor or the guidance office. Yes.
So Naviance is a web-based program that our guidance counselors use with students starting in 9th grade. And it's a tool that's career and college-based. So we have students going on in 9th and 10th grade doing career interest inventories, finding out about their characteristics, what they're most interested in, and what they know the most about. And then we try and match them up. It's cumulative. It's a cumulative program. But then when it goes on to junior and senior year, there are college searches that students can do. There's a way to access information on how many students in the past have applied to each of the schools, what the criteria might be. So that's kind of
what scholarships are out there.
So on the Naviance program, which students and parents do have access to. There's username and passwords for students and parents on this. There is a scholarship tab. So we met with students in the beginning of February, before February vacation, and went through the whole process of looking up scholarships on Naviance. How do you get there with it? And then looking up each scholarship in terms of what the criteria are. And for students then to be able to know how to apply for them. The application is online. It's a very simple application for the one that we have in our school, which most of our scholarships use. Some of them have their own application. So there is a lot of research that needs to be done. So that's why students and parents, it's a great
tool. But again, so worth it.
Oh, definitely.
I mean,
definitely.
I would caution parents against looking at, $60,000 for a private school, I can't afford it. When Lexi applied to Clark, they came back and offered her $8,000. Merit scholarship, it was like, 8 times, so it's $32,000. That's pretty cool.
Right.
And then she did, I don't know how many she got. She got a number of them, but like the Target one was 1,000. She got 500 here. It added up quick.
Right.
Then you look locally. I was always amazed at how many scholarships are available in Milford by Milfordians.
Right. It's a very generous community, that gives a lot each year. And That's the majority of the 80-plus scholarships that we have on Naviance that are listed. Those are mostly all from the Milford community.
And some of them are slam dunks.
Oh, very easy to apply for. The criteria most students will meet. It does. As you said before, with your daughter writing that essay, it does require extra steps to go through.
Let's see, going out and hanging with the kids or saving me money. I know which way I'm going to lean. But
right, and to go back to what you talked about in terms of the amount of, how much each college costs, that we don't want that to be criteria when students are parents are first looking at schools. And that's why we talk about students applying to between 5 and 8 on average schools, and at least one of those being a state university. Just so they have the options of schools that cost a lot, and then you never know how much students might get.
Now, I'm probably going to date myself, but we used to get a book with a little description of all 80 scholarships.
Oh, sure.
Is there still a book, or
There
is
is
it
still-
now
yes.
all PDFs?
No, there is still a book out there. That book you can access it online, but we still get those books every year. Barron's is the company that we usually work with, but there are a lot of other companies out there that put out a number of different books.
I remember looking down, and there's one scholarship. It said, "For the children of class of '74." Oh boy, there's like 2 graduating this year. That's going to be hard to qualify for.
Right. Oh, you're talking about the scholarships.
The scholarships.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
My class puts out a scholarship.
Right.
But every year it depends on how many kids graduate, how many scholarships are given.
Sure.
It's a way that when we have reunions, you pass the hat, and when one of our children graduates, they get a little scholarship.
Right.
There was others about, kids from the plains or kids from the heights. I mean, some of these really weren't that hard to qualify for.
Right. Some might be based on medical conditions. Some might be based on background. Some might be, very general. Some might be based on an activity that students are involved
for somebody
in.
going to continue a music career.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so
Or was sports related.
Football, whatever, the Football Association wants to help football kids.
Right.
Okay, so by definition, there's maybe, 40, 50 of them? Mm-hmm. That seems like pretty good odds compared to national.
It's true, where you could have hundreds of people applying to those scholarships.
Now, do I have to write a separate essay for every scholarship I apply?
Well,
or do they still group them?
Usually they group them. So we have our common scholarship application, which the majority of our community scholarships use. In that, there is a choice of essays to write. So if a student is applying to 10 of those scholarships, they could have that same essay count for all of those scholarships. Just make different copies of that and then leave that off with their application in the guidance office. The process would be once students know which scholarships they're applying for, bring those applications into the guidance office, and we have different files labeled in the guidance office with the name of each of the scholarships. So some of them we have our scholarship committee make decisions on. A number of them go out to the committees, like it could be the class of 1974, where they might your group might have a small committee of people who are making those decisions. And then the last step of the process is that students go back into their Naviance account and check off which of those scholarships they've applied for. So we then have that background on Naviance. If we bring up a scholarship, we know which students have applied for it.
Now, would it make sense if I'm a parent, junior year, I'm not eligible, but I want that book. I want to look at that book. Because next year it's going to matter.
Right.
The scholarships, they don't vary that much from year to year, do they?
Not too much, because we have a very generous community here. So a lot of the same ones.
Junior year, I want to go down and start prepping.
Right. I mistook for what you were talking about with the book. I thought you meant for colleges. So for scholarships, we don't have that book anymore.
I knew I was dating myself.
Yes.
I knew I was dating myself.
I apologize about that. But so everything is
But
is
you still
online.
have a PDF to read or
Oh,
something.
definitely, definitely. It's very easy to get that information, and we try and update it on the guidance, on the Milford High School web page, on the guidance
So
web
still,
page.
junior year parent can get the information of the
Sure.
80 scholarships,
Sure.
saying 78 of them are going to be there next year.
Right.
Let me look down and say, okay, I have to be Portuguese. Yep, that's one for me.
Right.
You know, I got to
Right.
be a Buddhist who worships on Tuesday, going to study chemistry in the don't qualify for that one.
Right.
But it would seem like, boy, I want to go down that list and start getting ready to
Right.
say, okay, if nothing changes, I'm going to apply for 14 of them.
Right.
Okay? Next year, I got a year from now to prep and help my child apply.
Yeah.
Because when that check came in, boy, I'm thinking that's $500 less out of my pocket.
And that could be a semester or a year worth of books. You know, those could be supplies. That's definitely.
Don't care. It's $500 less that I don't have to work for.
Exactly, exactly. And your theme about starting as early as possible, I think, is a really great one and a great message, you know, to send to all parents out there who have students, even coming up in the lower grades, you know, to start being aware of, you know, those different steps that go along in this process.
And at the end of the day, come senior year, was it first week in November is early decision for most?
Many of them are either November 1st or November 15th. It could even be December 1st. And then there's now what we found this year is that colleges even sometimes have a second early decision or early action date. It's kind of like the first wave is early to mid-November, and then the second wave could
Well,
be
you had to wait
middle
for
December.
first semester grades.
Usually that's what happens. Yeah,
Because I
but
remember it was a Tuesday that Emily applied to Holy Cross.
you have a great memory.
It was a long 3 days of misery. Friday, mid-morning, I get a phone call from Jim Richardson, Associate Dean, because we didn't give out Emily's cell phone, we gave out mine.
Sure, sure.
And you hear, oh, hi, Al, how are you? I said, depends on what you're going to say. He says, well, I have a question about Emily's application. Of course, my heart now is
Right.
running at about 300 beats a
Oh, sure.
millisecond.
Yeah.
I gave him her number, and for 45 minutes, I remember my secretary just said, I canceled everything because you're going to be useless. He was right. She was right. My mind. Then Emily called, and I was like, well? She goes, he called to say congratulations. I was like, and you made me wait 45 minutes? But it was 3 of the longest
Wow.
days of my life.
Right.
Because we kept thinking, oh my God, if she doesn't get in. So
Right.
November, whatever, beginning of November is the first early decision.
Yes, yes, that is the first wave of early action. So there are different categories. There's that early action date and there's the early decision.
Now, early decisions seem to be pretty binary. If we accept you, you agree.
Yes, there are a couple conditions where students can get out of that binding agreement, especially when it comes down to financial
I
aid.
can't afford to go there.
Right, but overall, you know, that is a binding agreement where students can't even apply to other schools.
Right.
As you found with your daughter.
You're applying to one. If we
Right.
take you, you're done.
Right.
So
the
early action.
The early action is non-binding. So the trend now is that many more students are applying early action. A lot of colleges might have early action and or early decision. So for early decision, those are for the schools where the student is like your daughter. They have that school that they want to go to, and that's their number one choice, and they really want that to be the school that they go to. Early action, it can be a number of schools.
I can go early action on 2 or 3 schools.
Correct. More and more, the trend that we're seeing now is more and more students are applying early action to schools. I think the numbers are we had either between a third and a half of our current seniors apply early action to schools.
And that seems like a benefit to the schools because as they fill up their class, they can get a little pickier, let's say,
That's true.
with the last 20 or 30 seats of the class.
Right.
Because they know they're going to have 300 choices.
Right.
So early action then starts in November, but
Yes.
that rolls.
That sometimes it could be that schools are waiting. They want to see second term grades. They could put students on hold where they want to see those second term grades, or they could say we want to hold off in terms of the regular decision day. So they might defer that until later on in the year, or they might turn down students overall and say we don't accept you. And what we're seeing is that no two schools sometimes do it the same. So students and parents really need to be involved and on top of how
when is the
colleges are doing it.
normal application date?
It differs.
It varies,
yeah,
but
the most competitive schools, those are going to be earlier on in the year. That could be the middle of January, the end of January, early February. When lesser competitive schools could go March 1st. There could also be rolling admissions where students can apply anytime during the year. But I would say the majority of schools, do have March 1st as that final
That's going to
date.
be the end. If
Yes,
I'm not
that
applying
usually
by
is.
March 1st, because you're going to get your letter of acceptance April 1st,
That's hopefully, hopefully the plan.
and you've got till May 1st.
To make your final decision. Yep. And community college also comes into this part in terms of different types of schools that students are applying to. Whereas community colleges, we have Mass Bay and Quinsigamond Community College very close by. Those could be safety schools for a lot of students and always great to apply to. That's rolling admissions also, so that students can apply anytime during the year. But we really push for students to apply earlier, so they have as much information.
Well, also, I would think just for your own sanity.
Exactly.
I mean, I got to tell you, when
You're talking about students and parents.
Yes. November 6th came and we knew she was going to Holy Cross.
Right.
After it sank in that I just signed up for how much money? Wait a minute, did I want her? Yes, I did
Right.
want her to get accepted, but
Right.
the rest of the year we could breathe easy.
Right.
You didn't have to go through that angst, that anxiety of putting in 6 different applications and
Yep.
waiting for 6 more to come in.
I know.
But now I'm going to pick 6 schools.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still pick a reach school, pick a safety school?
Definitely. So we talk about those reach schools might be that criteria for acceptance might be a little bit above where students are. We talk about those match schools where it looks like students might be able to get in there, might not be a reach, and then safety schools where there's no question that students could get in there.
Well, I
so those are the 3 categories.
First place
that
I
we're
got
really talking
accepted
about.
was UMass. And right away I said, thank God I don't have to learn to say, do you want fries with that order? Somebody wants me. I will go
Always
to school.
a great feeling.
Once I
Always a
had
great
one,
feeling. Yeah.
whether it was my ultimate school
Mm-hmm.
or not, I had one.
Right.
I'm not going to have to flip burgers. This is
Right.
good.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with flipping burgers, but it
No.
made me feel better.
Yeah.
So, again, early seems to be the key.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure's off because I'd hate to be rolling into March 1st and have 7 essays to finish.
Exactly.
And then I got to believe that you're a little busier.
The guidance
around
office, yes.
To get resumes and transcripts and all that stuff out.
Yeah, well, and the recommendation letters are a huge part of the guidance counselor's work and teachers' work. We did something different this year where all teachers can do them online and attach them to, again, Naviance, that they can attach them to the students' applications. So now we have the ability with Naviance to be able to do everything electronically, just about everything. So it saves a lot of paper and is the way that's another trend as where colleges are going towards.
But again, when I think about, I'm going to my chemistry teacher.
Mm.
When I had to go to good old Dr. Jablonski back then, if you went early, I got to believe he had 30 extra seconds because there weren't 14 kids asking
Right.
him at the exact same time.
Right,
So again, planning it out junior year, going early.
right.
How sad was it that my daughter had to go ask the same biology teacher I had for... Yes, things didn't change much in the high
Talk
school.
about knowing the family. That's great. Another thing I wanted to talk about just mention before we finish was the other part of scholarships being local in terms of networking. Students talking to their parents being aware at their job that there might be scholarships available. So and those might not be ones that we're offering in the school. There could be ones that are available that we don't know
I
about.
totally forgot. Go to your HR department
Yep, as parents, definitely.
and just ask.
Right.
Do you
Right.
offer, or do you match, or do you do anything?
Right. That could, that could be another $500, $1,000, and it could be extremely easy for students to apply for those scholarships. So I wanted to mention that before we
No,
finish.
that's great advice.
Yeah.
So I guess overall, as the good politician Daley said in Chicago, vote early and often.
That is
in this
true.
case,
Apply
early and often.
That's great. That's great. I love that theme in terms of doing that. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for everything you do to help the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Correia, for having me on.
And as always, take advantage, because as much as we talk about Milford schools, I always laugh with the good Dr. Tremblay saying, I can love you, I can hate you. The real judge, in my mind, was the schools in Massachusetts. You can think Milford has the greatest schools or not the greatest, but I was really happy that every school my daughters applied to, even in Emily's case there was only one, but every school Lexi applied to, they came back and said Milford's a good school system because they accepted her.
Right.
And a lot of our kids are applying to not the shabbiest schools in the Ivy League here. So overall, we've got a good school system. Use it. Get involved early. It's kind of fun to get involved with your kids. They have to spend time with you then.
That's true.
And every time another $500 or $1,000 check comes in, it felt good. So as always, thanks for joining. If you have any questions, call the guidance office. Get involved early. Get time to do everything so it's not rushed. And thank you for watching. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better day than today. Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home, running all my life just